I am Dana Babella, researcher of Clean Air Asia, and I will be your host for today's event. So a few reminders before we start our workshop. So please rename your name in Zoom to name dash your affiliation or city. So example is here shown. So Dana Babella dash Clean Air Asia. And then please stay in a quiet room and mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And please be reminded that the session video and all of the chat will be recorded. And for Q&A or for any questions, the participants are requested to send their questions via chat, and we will field these questions to the specific speaker. We would also like to recognize the support of the Integrated Program for Better Air Quality in Asia through the Ministry of Environment of Japan, or MOEJ, and Strengthening Air Quality Communities of Practice in the Asia Pacific project through the U.S. Department of State in partnership with the UN Environment Program for making this event possible. So to officially start the event, I would like to call on Ms. Glinda Batan-Baterina, Deputy Director of Clean Air Asia. So Ms. Glinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dana. To our honorable guest, Thomas Schmidt from the U.S. Department of State, Ms. Soraya Smaun from the UN Environment Program, Christopher Godlove of Think Cities, our representatives from Hanoi and Davao city governments, Ms. Tuy Latan and Attorney Tristan Domingo, to all participants joining us from Asia and other parts of the world, I welcome you all to the Clean Air Solutions webinar. This is IBAQ Programme's regional training on air quality financing. First of all, I would like to thank our partners, UNEP, the Ministry of Environment Japan, and the U.S. Department of State for their support in our efforts to strengthen air quality financing and city governments. Clean Air Asia is a 20-year-old international NGO that is leading the regional mission for better air quality and healthier, more livable cities in the region. Our mission is to reduce air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in Asia and contribute to the development of a more sustainable, equitable, and healthier region. One of our programs is the Integrated Better Air Quality Program. And since its inception in 2014, we have been emphasizing and focusing our efforts on capacity building of governments, particularly on technical capacity building and enforcement capacity building, which are key components of air quality management. In the second phase of the program, starting in 2019, we began to focus on helping cities move towards supporting solutions to improve air quality and address climate change. We have done this by guiding cities on technology transfer and finance planning in order to operationalize their clean air action plans. We are very pleased to have today this regional training on air quality financing, which is organized together with the UN Environment Program. Following the launch of Guidance Area 7, which is on financing air quality management. This guidance area 7 was launched in September last year. With the challenges related to financing air quality action and climate change mitigation measures, it was identified that this document is key to help Asian cities translate their ambition into action. And today, during the workshop, highlights of Guidance Area 7 will be presented by Mr. Christopher Godlove of Think Cities, while the application of its key concepts will be elucidated by our speakers from Hanoi and Davao. And they will share about their respective city success in financing key priority air quality solutions and collaborations with other actors towards resource sharing and ensuring synergy of efforts. Finally, as this webinar aims to continue cultivating a community of practice, during the breakout group discussions, which I hope you will actively participate in, we hope to hear and learn from all of you, our participants, on the state of your own cities in terms of air quality financing, what successes, what challenges and opportunities you may have encountered for addressing financing challenges, and examples of how you have been collaborating with other actors and stakeholders to ensure clean air and a safe climate for your cities. This is all from my end, and I hope we have a meaningful afternoon with all of you today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Glinda, for your message. So we will now be listening to a few words from our partners and co-organizers. So I would like to first call on Mr. Thomas Schmid, the Director of the Regional Environment, Science, Technology, and Health Office for East and Southeast Asia Hub at the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. So his office helps develop regional policy and programming for the U.S. government, focusing on transboundary water resource management, air quality, food security, clean energy, climate change mitigation and adaptation, biodiversity conservation, wildlife trafficking, and building regional science education and health systems capacity. So let's hear from Mr. Thomas Schmidt for his message.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Glinda, for that welcoming remarks. Reducing and eliminating pollution and expanding the number of people who can breathe clean air are critical priorities for the United States. The economic benefits of reducing air pollution are not in doubt. Since 1970, when the United States enacted our Clean Air Act, we have reduced the emissions of the most dangerous pollutants by 78%, even as our economy grew by nearly 300% over that same period. The EPA estimates that every dollar invested in cleaning the air returns $30 to $90 in improved health and economic productivity. There's no question that air pollution should be reduced. I want to discuss briefly how regional cooperation on air quality can help expand access to clean air. Air quality cooperation between the United States and Canada is one of the best examples. We share local climates and our pollution flows across each other's national boundaries. We have a common interest in sharing scientific know-how on the impact of forest fires and coordinating our policies so we are achieving the greatest buy down in air pollution for the least cost. At a larger scale of cooperation, we have the Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution, also known as LRTAP. Since LRTAP came into effect in 1983, emissions of air pollutants in Europe have decreased by 40 to 80%. Part of the success in cleaning the air in North America and Europe comes from those countries making investments in people and technology. There are many places where there is simply no data on air quality, which means that the people trying to reduce air pollution are working blindfolded. But regional cooperation offers a pathway to building air quality management capacity from the ground up. The first requirement is air quality data. There's a lot of good science out there already. We can use low-cost sensors, satellite data, and modeling to develop timely and reliable data for making policy. That requires expertise in regional frameworks to serve as a focal point for building and expanding regional data networks. Once you have the data, you need the people who can interpret it and institutions that can develop and implement cost-effective pollution management strategies appropriate for local conditions. Again, regional frameworks could serve as a clearinghouse for sharing knowledge and training opportunities. Regional frameworks allow countries to pool resources and share knowledge. They would also provide a natural mechanism for coordinating donor assistance with countries' domestic efforts, ensuring that external resources have maximum impact in providing sustainable pathways for achieving clean air. Finally, but not least, as we all know, air pollution does not respect political borders, which means that cooperation among neighboring countries is critical to improving air quality. regional frameworks are a natural venue in which this coordination can take place. Over the next 2 years, we look forward to working with others, including our partners in the Asia-Pacific region, to discuss developing a global architecture for regional air quality cooperation. We hope to have strong proposals ready for the 6th session of the UN Environmental Assembly that builds upon the successes and lessons learned from the Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution. Again, I would like to thank the organizers of today's event and all of you for dedicating your time and energy to making the world a cleaner and healthier place to breathe and live. And I wish you success in today's trainings. Back to you, Dana.
Thank you, Director Schmidt. So in his opening message, Director Schmidt highlighted the importance of regional framework in air quality management, and he also emphasized that indeed collaboration and cooperation across the region is very important for air quality and climate action. So next, we would like to hear from Ms. Soraya Smon, the Air Quality Coordinator from the UN Environment Program or UNEP. So Soraya provides support to the strategic development of air quality work in the UN environment and operational program on air quality together with national and city governments. So Soraya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. So on behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, it gives me great pleasure to speak to you today for this webinar on the critical issue of air quality financing. It is indeed a critical element in air quality management and will be necessary to shift the needle on air pollution and put air quality back to the center of the discourse globally. Today, I would like to share with you 3 main messages. The first one being, and maybe this is starting by stating the obvious, air pollution is a significant environmental risk to human health and the economy, but doesn't receive the attention and funding needed. As we know, it's a significant environmental and health issue responsible for an estimated 6.7 million premature deaths in 2019, with associated costs estimated to be 5.7 trillion, to equivalent to 4.8% of the global GDP. The evidence is also overwhelming that air pollution affects us all, the young, the old, the vulnerable, and even those who are healthy. It can affect the environment and also agriculture. And of course, in a warming climate, heat plus air pollution equal more air pollution and more health and environmental effects. I would like to here state the state of air quality funding produced by the Clean Air Fund in 2021, which indicated that less than 1% of total official development and foundation funding is spent on tackling air pollution. If sufficient resources to tackle this problem are not mobilized, the impact of the problem will run out of control. As the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change tells us, the targeted reduction of many air pollutants can reduce global warming and improve air quality. Second message for today's webinar, significant gaps remain on putting in place enabling environment to address air pollution.
I think checking if Soraya is still with us. Okay, I think she got disconnected. So let me just check quickly. Okay, so I think with that, Ms. Soraya indeed highlighted that air pollution knows no bounds and affects everyone, the youth and the old, and hence it is important to address air quality and climate issues, which we can do through solutions that can through the initiatives of cities. And it is important that we will be able to, and the lessons today that we will be learning is important in the application. of these solutions. So before we begin or move on to our next speaker, may I request all the speakers with us today if we could take a group photo. So I'll stop sharing my screen and requesting all the speakers to turn on your camera, and so that we could take a photo. Okay, so I see some of the participants also turning on their camera, so please feel free to join us. So requesting help from my Cleaner Asia colleagues in taking a screenshot of our participants and our speakers. So please hold your smile for 2 to 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, so checking if everyone got that. So another one just for good measure. So please hold your smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you everyone. And now let me just quickly share my screen. Okay. So now we've heard from the opening remarks and messages from our partners. So the next portion of our event today, to give our participants a background on today's training on air quality financing, may I call on Ms. Dang Espita Casanova, the Program Manager of Clean Air Asia. So Dang, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dana. Checking if you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this IBAQ program, regional training on air quality financing. I think the speakers before me have highlighted how important it is to really talk and discuss how we can really transform, the frameworks, the programs, and the actions, and how we can affect change on the ground. And as Glinda, I think, mentioned in her opening remarks, since we have started the IBAQ program in 2014, we focused really on building the capacity of governments, specifically cities, to embark on clean air and climate action planning and build the capacity of institutions to operationalize actions on the ground. And we are, I think, at this point where we really need to talk about how we can um, translate this into actual reductions and capacities built to address the most pressing emission sources of both air pollutant and climate emissions. So I think in the past couple of years, what we have done is after we have launched, after we have started our focused work on developing the guidance area on air quality financing, we have also worked with cities to better understand their needs in terms of capacity building, in terms of data and information gaps that can be filled in through collaborations and partnerships. And we have focused on our work on really understanding, the most appropriate and practical steps for cities to take to really embark and operationalize these programs. So the session, for today's session, we aim to provide an overview on air quality management financing as a core component of a strategic system for air pollution and climate action. And I think for the past year, we have also provided a similar session on this topic, and we want new participants to take this refresher on that specific topic, and also, of course, our IBAQ program focus cities. We wanted also to facilitate this convening for cities and other stakeholders to share needs, of course, lessons learned and insights regarding air quality and climate work, which would require financial planning. And we would also would want to make use of this time to converse with you how the IBAQ program and related initiatives supported by our partners can support financial planning of Asian cities within the context of course, of air quality management, and of course, further following a co-innovation, multi-stakeholder approach. And lastly, the session is designed to share lessons learned as well on strengthening regional communities of practice, which Director Thomas earlier really emphasized is the way forward. And it's really a means of leveraging resources and, varied expertise and collaboration across actors in the region. So we wanted to delve more on those lessons, and we hope cities and other stakeholders in the region can adopt and replicate it in practice. So next slide, please. So for this particular session, we have structured the next 2.5 hours in terms of providing technical guidance on the topic of financing air quality management, but also we would have speakers from cities of Hanoi and Davao who would speak more about their experience on how they have operationalized, of course, air quality and climate actions, and how financing really helped to transform this into change and impact on the ground. And then next slide, please. We would also have an opportunity to break out into groups and discuss the different activities, the different opportunities for us to really bring programs and measures that aim to build capacity and reduce emissions, and how financing or funding can really support this, and what type of support is needed for cities and stakeholders to operationalize such programs. So we would expect as well that since this is part of a Clean Air webinar series of the UN Environment Program, and of course the IBAQ program, that this is not the last event or the last session that would touch on the topic, as we see that this topic is really gaining traction in terms of interest among city stakeholders. So we hope to also have you in following events as well. And my last slide, I just wanted to highlight some key lessons which we gleaned from our interactions working with cities and stakeholders in the region. And I think in the past, especially in the past 2 years, we saw that there's a continuous growth in cities' awareness and recognition of co-benefits brought about by integrated interventions in addressing air pollution, climate change, and development issues. We saw this in interacting with city decision makers, policy makers, and practitioners, as well as the stakeholders which support air and climate actions that of course harness co-benefits. So what we also saw is that with this motivation, there's growing interest among cities to invest in climate and air pollution related projects. This include activities such as active mobility infrastructure, energy efficiency measures, expansion of green spaces, which all harness air quality, climate, and health benefits. And of course, I also wanted to highlight what Thomas earlier said about data and information. We also saw that there's growing appetite among city executives and city managers to really generate and consolidate data, and at the same time analyze this and communicate this in a form that informs action urgent action on the ground. So with this, I'd like to maybe share a really important point that what we see is that there's this great opportunity to assist and provide technical assistance to cities to build capacity, to generate and collect data and information, to inform further project structuring, of course, finance planning and project development. And further, we also note that, of course, cities would need guidance from us partners from all disciplines, be it in the development arena or even in the academe or other segments of course, the society. We need to work with cities in ensuring, of course, that there's alignment and coherence of policies and plans with other subnational and national frameworks and strategies, of course, to facilitate or to increase access to finance to realize these programs and actions. So with that, I would like to hand over again to Dana to introduce our next speaker.
So thank you, Dang, for giving us an intro on in the today's event. So moving on, we will be hearing about lessons from strengthening regional communities of practice on air quality, which will be shared by Ms. Kay Patdu, the Associate Program Officer of the UN Environment Program Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. So she coordinates the Asia Pacific Clean Air Partnership, or APCP, and a regional partnership working to achieve measurable reductions in air pollution emissions in Asia Pacific, and has over 10 years of experience working on air quality issues in the region. So Kay, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dana, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much to Cleaner Asia for the support, and also to United States Department of State, and also other Cleaner Asia partners that are helping us make this event possible. So for this next few minutes, allow me to share with you just some of the lessons learned in terms of how we can further strengthen regional cooperation from the work that we have done with support from the US Department of State. The information that I'm showing here, I'm sure is very familiar to everyone that is joining us today, but just to reiterate the issue that we are now facing, which is air pollution being at a critical stage and continues to be the single largest environmental health risk that we all face. The statistics paint a very worrying picture. We know that 92%, or about 4 billion people that live here in Asia Pacific region, are exposed to unhealthy levels of air pollution. And this is really a serious issue that cannot be ignored. Even as our region continues to combat the social and economic challenges that has been brought about with the COVID-19 pandemic, air pollution as well as greenhouse gas emissions are now back on the rise, following a small reprieve in early 2020 during the implementation of various types of movement restrictions to contain the pandemic. And very recent report that was just launched last week, the 2022 SDG Progress Report for Asia and the Pacific, showed that progress towards reducing urban air pollution has been stagnant since 2015. So this really demonstrates, I think, the importance of us working stronger towards this issue. I think Soraya has already mentioned it briefly during her remarks, but we know that everyone is affected, but the impacts of air pollution fall most on those that are already at risk and already very vulnerable. This includes children, young people, women, elderly, and people that are already living in poverty. And it's also infringing on our right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. So in 2014, UNEP was called upon by member states at the first United Nations Environment Assembly to facilitate immediate and coordinated action to address air pollution. As part of this, the UNEP Asia Pacific Office responded to this mandate by launching the Asia Pacific Clean Air Partnership of APCAP in 2015. This partnership was set up to enhance synergies among various air pollution initiatives in the region, and also to promote science policy dialogue to address air pollution. This call for action was also reiterated at the third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly in 2017 with a new resolution on air pollution, where member states called for UNEP to support enhancement of regional cooperation to address air pollution, and also to organize regional communities of practice for air quality management. Through the work that we have done through APTAP and with many partners, we have developed a regional assessment to try to identify what are the key solutions that are appropriate for the region that will bring about benefits for health, air quality, environment, and for the climate. We have developed this Air Pollution in Asia Pacific Science-Based Solutions Report, which identified these 25 policy and technology measures that will deliver benefits by addressing PM 2.5 and ozone in the region. And I won't go through this in great detail. The information is available in the report, but we did highlight the 25 measures that are organized into 3 clusters. Asia-wide application of conventional measures that focus on addressing emissions leading to the formation of primary PM 2.5. Next stage, air quality measures. These are those that measures that reduce the formation of secondary PM 2.5 and are not usually major components of clean air policies in many parts of the region. Some examples include addressing open burning, measures relating to agriculture. And then the third category is development priorities, so measures that contribute to countries' development priorities that also provide benefits for air quality. So for example, promotion of electric mobility and renewable energy. And we know, of course, why we need to cooperate. And just to refresh our memories, we know that to be able to design appropriate strategies to address air pollution, for example, PM 2.5, we need to be able to understand its nature. And we know that PM 2.5 transcends our typical boundaries. We know that even if we indicate specific jurisdictions, air pollution does not respect those. Air pollution problems can be caused by local and also regional sources of emission, and it does not stop at city, provincial, or even national borders. PM 2.5 emissions can also come from many sources, local and provincial, and this makes the issue of addressing air pollution very challenging. This includes transport, household emissions from residential cooking, lighting, and heating, from waste, agriculture, industry, and power generation. Addressing PM 2.5, which is a key pollution for our region, requires that we address sources of primary and also secondary PM 2.5. So this needs to be able to apply a multi-pollutant, multi-sectoral approach that engages multiple stakeholders to be able to reach the success of breathing cleaner air for Asia Pacific region. And this really highlights, I think, why we need to have cooperation at multiple levels, horizontal, vertical cooperation to be able to achieve better air quality for everyone. So with these challenges in mind, in 2019, UNEP, with support from the United States Department of State, established this regional communities of practice on air quality to further support the enhancement of regional cooperation and knowledge sharing to address air pollution. These communities of practice really serve as an inclusive, informal network of air quality practitioners that are coming together to inform, engage, innovate on issues that are relating to clean air measures and clean air solutions for Asia Pacific. We've, over the last few years, we've supported clean air solutions webinar series, trainings, workshops, and discussions on key issues for our region, initially focusing on electric mobility, open burning of waste, and also health impacts of air pollution. Just to share with you some of the lessons and achievements that we have done as part of this work, the network and this community, I think, has grown tremendously over the past couple of years. It's grown to over 1,000 air quality practitioners that are subscribed to our mailing list and participate in various clean air solutions webinars and trainings that the project has organized. Since 2019, when we launched the webinar series, we've organized 9 so far, and also 2 regional trainings on the community of practice. We've also expanded the scope of the topics that we have focused on, starting initially from health, electric mobility, and open burning. The discussions of the community of practice expanded to emerging issues that we have experienced in the last couple of years, including linkages of air pollution and COVID-19, how we can build back better from the pandemic, integrated approaches for air quality and climate, and the I think engagement in terms of hybrid air quality monitoring. We've also, I would say, been quite successful in facilitating sharing of experiences and also identification of good practices on addressing air pollution. And this has actually contributed to our efforts in reporting on the progress of countries in addressing air pollution through the UNEP report Actions on Air Quality, specifically, of course, the Asia Pacific summary that was launched as part of the celebration, commemoration of the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies last year in September. So just to share with you maybe just a few results of this, of where we are in the region in terms of addressing air pollution based on this report that our network and community have contributed to. There has been significant progress that has been made by countries to be able to improve air quality. I think one of the areas where there has been good progress from our region is in terms of adopting new technologies and enforcing conventional measures to reduce vehicle emissions. For the past couple of years, there has been some action picking up in terms of reducing emissions from heavy-duty vehicles, which is quite, I think, quite notable, especially with new policies adopted in China and in India. There has also been, I think, an increase in terms of countries that have adopted or are planning to adopt national, subnational laws, strategies to be able to achieve their air quality goals. For example, in early 2019, there was India's National Clean Air Program that includes a target to reduce PM 2.5 by 20 to 30% by 2024 compared to 2017 levels. There was also Thailand's action plan for the national agenda of solving the problem of PM 2.5 dust that was launched in 2019, and various other countries, including our work in Cambodia with the launch of the first Clean Air Plan early this year. So there has been progress, but of course we all know that, you know, even when we look outside, especially during specific times of the year, there's still much work that needs to be done. There has been recent analysis that was led by our partners with the Climate and Clean Air Coalition that demonstrates the transboundary nature of air pollution, really the importance of regional international cooperation. We know that there have been several intergovernmental and voluntary cooperation frameworks and initiatives that have been working in our region. Unfortunately, even though there has been progress, existing initiatives have not yet fully succeeded in reversing the region's issue of air pollution. In another analysis that was done by UNEP, we noted that there was only 31% of countries, and this is globally, that have legal mechanisms for managing or addressing transboundary air pollution, despite the recognition that transnational or transcontinental transport of air pollutants affect our air quality within countries. And of course, we hope to be able to continue with our partners, be able to strengthen regional cooperation on air pollution, especially I think in the last couple of years, growing momentum for action. So for example, with the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies, and there has been ongoing discussions for further strengthening regional cooperation with the leadership of member states through the UNEP, the United Nations Environment Assembly, and also varying processes with the UNESCAP. Maybe just one last point I wanted to highlight. This is something that I think is a good opportunity for us to start in terms of collaboration, is on strengthening air quality monitoring, and something I think we'll be discussing later in the training. We recognize that the access and availability of air quality data continues to be a challenge in developing Asia. And of course, many countries continue to struggle and establish and really sustain an air quality monitoring network. some analysis that we have done is that 60% of countries or 18% of the global population have no annual ground-based monitoring for PM 2.5, which is, I think, a critical pollutant of concern for our region. We've noted, I think, during the second technical meeting of the Community of Practice last September, some of the lessons that we can learn in terms of strengthening this issue. Sorry, I just hear. Okay, thank you. Sorry, just last points. We've heard during our second technical meeting, as I was saying, of the Community of Practice in September that looked into this issue of hybrid air quality monitoring. What is the value of a community of practice in terms of moving forward and strengthening our capacity for hybrid air quality monitoring? And just sharing with you the very nice visual summary that was presented during our meeting. But really, this convening and bridging the community of practice of scientists, regulators, community members, the knowledge and information is very rich, and this platform provides us this access to be able to inform and facilitate broader and strengthened air quality management. We've heard quite positive messages in terms of further strengthening these types of platform, and we hope to continue this work with our partners to move this forward. And just, I think, a few final messages just to say that, of course, air pollution is our shared responsibility, and we need these types of partnerships involving different types of stakeholders, government, private sector, civil society, to be able to facilitate and support cleaner action. So we look forward to continue this partnership as we work together to beat air pollution, and looking forward to the discussions at this training today. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Kay, for sharing on the community of practice and the importance of linkages and regional cooperation in addressing air quality and climate issues. So I think we have Ms. Soraya Smon back. So we're requesting if Ms. Soraya can continue on with her message for everyone.
Yes, thank you very much, Dana. And my apologies, I got kicked out of the meeting. It was telling me that it's reached its capacity of 500 participants, which is great news. And the same happened to other colleagues of mine who are connected remotely. So I don't know, but my apologies for that. And I hope this won't happen again. I think my colleague Kay did a very good job in reiterating the messages I was sharing with you earlier on. I was actually on my last point, on my last message, which was that solutions exist, such as regional cooperation, international cooperation, as well as partnerships with the private sector, but also public-private partnerships. I was just sharing the promising news from the Global Methane Pledge, which aims to reduce global methane emission by at least 30% by 2030 from 2020 level, and other new commitments which have been done by at least 20 countries to phase out coal power, including 5 of the world's top 20 coal power using countries during the last COP26. I also would like to reiterate the importance of the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies as an important mechanism in international and regional cooperation. As you know, this was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2019, and it serves really as a platform to strengthen global solidarity and political momentum for action to improve air quality and raise the necessary financial and technical support. So under this day, UNEP, together with other partners, is providing support to the development of a coalition of interested member states to financially support the air pollution agenda and successful solution. So far, the Republic of Korea and Germany have financially contributed to the day, and we are hoping that other member states will join for the next editions. Of course, I cannot conclude my remarks without mentioning UNEA 5.2 and the UNEA Plus 50 celebration, which were held here in Nairobi last month. And the overall theme was strengthening action for nature to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, highlighting the pivotal role nature plays in our lives and in social, economic, and environmental sustainable development. We had more than 175 member states, 79 ministers, 17 high-level officials, and of course, good representation of major groups and stakeholders, and all met to negotiate crucial resolution for the future of our planet and for strengthening action to address the three planetary crises of climate change, biodiversity, and pollution. And I would just like to recognize that 14 resolutions were adopted across 5 clusters. Of course, you've heard about this, the most important achievement, which has been the agreement around the legally binding agreement on plastic pollution by the end of 2024. But another one of interest for this audience is also under the pollution agenda is also the development of a science policy panel on chemicals, waste, and pollution, which will complement the efforts of IPCC and IPBES in the climate and biodiversity areas. And thanks to the US government, air pollution was also on the radar of UNEA, of the last UNEA, with the organization of a successful event on regional solution to the air pollution crisis. So I would just like to conclude to, again, thanks the critical actors, US State Department, as well as Clean Air Asia, as well as my other colleagues in UNEP, and all of you who have convened here today to discuss about this very important issue of air quality financing. And I just would like to wish you fruitful discussion today and hoping to stay connected until the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Soraya. And apologies for the inconvenience. We look into the issue of the capacity of the Zoom meeting, but this has already been resolved, and we encourage our participants to share the registration link, or if you have any colleagues who have had trouble accessing before, please let them know that they can join again. So thank you. So next, we will be hearing to talk about financing air quality management. May we call on Mr. Christopher Godlove, the founder of Think Cities Consulting. So Chris is an urban sustainability professional of Think Cities Consulting, which is based in Brussels. So his work involves assisting cities to develop municipal climate and sustainability strategies, concentrating mainly on municipal waste management, methane mitigation, energy efficiency, and sustainable communications. During the course of his presentation, we invite our participants to share questions or comments they may have in our chat box. If time permits, we'll ask Chris to address some of these questions after his presentation, live or in the chat box. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dana, for the introduction. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Good. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. As Dana mentioned, I'm joining you today from Brussels, Belgium, where I'm working on a variety of issues related to sustainability with cities. Prior to that was in the US, in Washington, DC for many years, where I worked with a number of different NGOs, private sector, as well as US EPA, where I worked specifically on air and climate issues and methane. So today I'm going to be talking to you, or kind of presenting presenting to you a little bit more of a framework, a tool, I think specifically for cities to orient them in their efforts to get smart about air quality finance. The context provided by the previous speakers was very helpful for kind of establishing the approach of governments, transboundary pollution, the role of international partners. But today I think the focus is really on cities. And so This guidance area 7 was an attempt to something that I worked on in close collaboration with my colleagues at Clean Air Asia, to develop an approach for cities to really begin to think about the actions that they can take and how they can start to address the lack of financial resources to implement air quality measures. So just to begin this discussion, and actually I think we'll be sharing the document in the chat as well for you all to have a look and to take that home with you. So just starting out, would like to talk a little bit about some of the strategies to support air quality and air quality governance. A few basic concepts. First, governance requires resources, so that includes both personnel and financial resources. It's important that air quality commitments be voiced by political leaders. So having that support and that political will ensures kind of long-term sustainability and provides predictability for financial revenue streams. And it's also important that AQM is rooted in a very kind of transparent and predictable budgetary process, so that because these investments take many years, the investments, the infrastructure, the systems take many years to develop, having that predictability is going to be important. We've just to address some of the well, we've actually talked quite a bit about kind of the reasons for actions, but of course, whenever you talk about finance or investment, it's important to understand why we're doing that. And so, you know, these are all numbers that you'll be familiar with, but certainly, you know, PM was addressed by Kay very effectively. The impact on health, in terms of the impact on economic productivity. These are all important message points for us as city professionals, city leaders to be aware of, so that we can be communicating this alongside the message of the need for additional resources. Just to address briefly kind of the role of cities and why city action is important. We know that cities are hubs. They're hubs of economic, financial, intellectual, and cultural activity. At the same time, cities are resource sinks. So consuming water, consuming energy, and that resource consumption has many negative impacts as well. Cities have the capacity for action. So we have good examples of cities taking action, and Indian cities adopting Euro 4 equivalent standards. At the same time, cities manage and provide many services to citizens, and with that comes their oversight of these services and the opportunity for them to adapt and to modify those services in ways that are less polluting. Cities also face many demands for these resources, of course. In the past, cities relied on national budgetary transfers, so funds essentially coming from the national government to support cities. With devolution, that's changed, and so we've seen a trend and a need for cities to become increasingly self-reliant, along with the increasing responsibility that they're having in terms of management of services and infrastructure. Urbanization has really outpaced existing service provision, and budgets haven't kept up. And this has led cities to need to seek out alternative ways to pay for this infrastructure and these services. We talked a little bit about the link between clean air and climate already, acknowledging the work of partners, of course, UNEP and Climate and Clean Air Coalition. But you know, this is good news. This is there's opportunity for double wins here by addressing pollutants that are both impacting climate as well as impacting health in the environment. At the same time, the transition to greener energy sources is helping us achieve these goals. So I think important to acknowledge that that by focusing on things like PM 2.5 and black carbon, that we're essentially tackling two goals at the same time. So just to now begin to enter into a little bit about the framework as to how we structured the guidance area 7. Essentially thinking about how thinking about an approach to finance within cities. And we came up with a series of 4 objectives. The first being the mobilization of resources. The second, thinking about mainstreaming Aqm finance within existing services. The third, focusing on mechanisms and instruments to support Aqm. And the last, really the scaling up and the mobilizing of resources that would go along with a Clean Air Action Plan. So I'll talk about a little bit about each of these in the next few slides. When we talk about mobilizing resources, this I think is really foundational. This is an area that, while not linked directly to major investments in infrastructure, is what everything else is built on. And so we're talking about things like emissions monitoring, inventory development, health impact assessments, all communications, and then all of these as inputs to the development of a longer term planning process around which other investments will be built. So this is essential, and this is something that really deserves focus in terms of how cities can invest and ensure that these actions are funded over the long term. Objective 2, in terms of mainstreaming Aqm within city services, I think this is interesting because, of course, this is the kind of really goes to the very basic reason for the existence of city administrations, right? The provision of services in a variety of areas: transport, health, water and wastewater services. But at the same time, it's interesting to think about kind of what the opportunities are for cities to fine-tune or adapt the management of these services that can be in more supportive of Aqm objectives. We talked about the focus or the trend and devolution away from national governmental management, and this is really in a way provided cities an opportunity to be more locally responsive to air quality challenges within their own actions. Just building on this a little bit, we can see kind of in this breakdown of city services and the opportunities for Aqm interventions, we see a whole host of areas where cities are providing services, things like public buildings, mobility and transport, green space, waste management, water and wastewater services, and then a whole series of Aqm interventions, which will have some overlap here, but things like energy efficiency, of course, renewable energy, land use planning, alternative transport mechanisms, but BRT and bike lanes. These are all things that will touch on various areas of service provision and have multiple and interrelated benefits across service areas of service provision, but deserve kind of planning and thinking to implement in a thoughtful way. Objective 3 really deals with financial mechanisms and economic instruments. And so here, again, these are all things that are not, excuse me. These are all things that are not new. One second, please. Excuse me. Are not new to cities, but are things that are certainly provide areas of opportunity for recovering, for developing new sources of revenue. So we'll talk about things like vehicle inspection fees and surcharges, re-inspection fees, civil settlements linked to environmental legal questions, and other types of administrative fees. And so here, I think the message is really thinking
Okay, I think Chris is having some technical difficulties, so let's wait for him a bit. Chris, if you're ready to share again.
I was having both technical difficulties and speaking difficulties. Let's see. Let's see if I can find the PowerPoint here. Yeah, thank you. And sorry for that. Okay, very good. So yeah, just talking about the opportunities from various sources of existing revenue. Let's see, and then drilling down into this just a little bit more.
Sorry for interrupting, Chris. What we can see right now is your desktop. Chris, I can share your presentation if you need.
Okay.
Okay, let me just open it.
Or maybe it goes there. Are you seeing it now?
Okay, right now we're seeing it.
Okay, sorry about that. So just a few words on the kind of the breakdown between national and local budgeting and revenues. And of course, at the national level, we're going to have a number of areas that impact air quality, things like transport fuel taxes, environmental taxes, carbon taxes, and then other on the budgetary side of things, mobility, environmental protection, clean energy. So again, thinking about opportunities for impacting AQM and how it relates specifically to cities. And then finally, objective 4, this is where we really talk about the scaling up of action. And for cities that already have a clean air action plan in place, this is where you have the opportunity to leverage other objectives related to climate, to transport, to other service provision areas. And also the area where you begin to think about accessing and interacting with external financial partners. Just to address a few of the kind of the categories of financial instruments available to cities, I think these are things that you will already be aware of, but it's important to sometimes kind of review it. And here we have, of course, own source revenues, all of those taxes, tariffs, existing sources of revenue that are there. The opportunity for cities to access debt and equity investments. We talked about transfers, and then some alternative sources, things like crowdsourcing and results-based financing would be other areas. This slide is really just an attempt to kind of demonstrate the relationships that exist within when we're talking about AQM. We have the city budget and the AQM planning process at the center. And then we're demonstrating the linkages here with the national budget providing input sometimes, these economic instruments that we talked about. External sources of finance, whether it's from multilaterals or commercial or private investors, national government. And then on the left side, we see the services themselves and the interplay there. And finally, the interventions, the ways that we're going to improve air quality and of course the investments required to enact those interventions. Important to also recognize that there are many barriers that exist to solving this problem. There's a simple lack of capital. There's institutional inertia. Why do something new when we've always done it this way? Institutional capacity is a big factor. Low returns, imperfect information. So a few slides to kind of think about how we can address some of those challenges. There's a concept that's common within climate circles, and that relates to financial readiness. Kind of 6 pillars here to address how that can be thought about, and they relate to political, regulatory, legal, revenues, developing revenue streams, financial modeling, and bidding. I think the message here is that by adequately preparing internally and readying ourselves for engagement with financial partners, we're going to be in a better place, both in terms of negotiating as well as in terms of knowing what existing resources we have to draw on. Financial readiness really serves several purposes: raising awareness of financial challenges, addressing weaknesses, really increases transparency, so and the opportunities for citizen engagement, and at the same time reduces risk. Another important concept that's talked a lot about in municipal financial services is credit worthiness. And this just is when you or I go to the bank to ask for a loan, they're going to be checking our credit worthiness. And so again, several concepts here that impact this concept and that institutional or financial partners would be looking at, everything from existing institutional frameworks, local economic activity, how finances are managed, budget performance, debt, and other liabilities. These are all things that'll go into that calculation of creditworthiness. And finally, kind of more strategic ways of addressing this is something that's included within the guidance area, is kind of this idea of developing a comprehensive approach internally, a comprehensive management approach that would involve a working group that goes beyond simply a focus on the financial, our financial colleagues, which are of course important, but would seek to include other views, legal, regulatory, environmental, political, and communications, because many of these efforts can succeed or fail based on good or poor communication strategies. And then finally, just a word on some of the things that investors will be looking at when assessing opportunities. The presence of legislative, regulatory, and licensing regimes, strategic objectives related to budget, good governance, a strong supporting network of stakeholders, and good, predictable, transparent mechanisms for procurement and contracting. And with that, just a few words on the power of green procurement. Cities buy a lot of services, buy a lot of stuff. They are working in a whole range of sectors and multiple activities. And so this provides opportunities to really integrate green purchasing criteria within that procurement process. So another angle, another aspect of financing that I think is important to mention. Just to conclude, a few additional resources that we found helpful in our work on this subject. The World Bank, C40, and UN Habitat, all offering excellent insights into many of these questions. And with that, I'll conclude. Sorry for the some of the technical glitches there, but look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
So thank you for your presentation, Chris. So to quickly assess what we have learned from Chris's presentation, and also if you have attended previous sessions on financing, I will be launching a Zoom poll as a recap. So I invite our participants to answer the recap quiz, and there are 3 questions, and we will be giving our participants around a minute or 2 to answer. So there are 3 questions. The first question is blank is associated with capital investment required for an initiative or project, while blank refers to revenues to repay for project costs. And then number 2, user charges such as transport, road toll fees and taxes are examples of what kind of financial instrument for a city's air quality management initiatives. And you have the following choices: own source revenue, debt or equity, transfers, and alternative sources. And the last question, so this is to check what do you think, what the participants think is one of the ways to address or what they think with regards to creditworthiness. So one of the ways to address the lack of upfront capital to fund investments is to focus on a city's creditworthiness, and which is defined as the ability to and willingness to repay contractual and debt obligations. So which of the following is true regarding it? So there are a few statements. So it is a top criterion of outside investors for assessing opportunity, or it also refers to long-term financial sustainability. The third option, it involves the assessment of a city's financial management and budget performance. And the last option is all of the above. So I think around, I'll just wait for a few more seconds so that participants are answering. Okay, so I think I'll end the poll in 5 seconds so that we could already share the results. Okay, so ending the poll. And I'm now sharing the results. So actually the correct, thank you for answering the quiz, and I will now share the results. So for question number 1, the correct answer is actually the second choice. So this is financing is associated with capital investment required, while funding refers to the revenues to repay project costs and financing actually. And then for number 2, the answer is taxes and toll fees or even tariffs are an example of own source revenues. And then the last one, the answer here, creditworthiness, is actually all of the statements are correct. So I'll stop sharing the results and we'll now move on to the next part of our event. So we will be hearing from 2 Asian cities from Vietnam and the Philippines on their experience of obtaining financing or funding for an air quality measure or intervention as an application of the concepts shared by Chris during his presentation and of the guidance area 7 on financing air quality management. As with our previous speakers, we invite our participants to send in their questions via the chat box, and we will have then the opportunity for some of these questions answered later on. So first, I would like to call on Ms. Thuy Lethan, Head of Project Management and Communication Division of Hanoi Environmental Protection Agency, Hanoi Department of Natural Resources and Environment. So Ms. Thuy has more than 20 years of experience in the field of environmental management and communication of Hanoi EPA. Ms. Thuy will share about Hanoi's experience in its motor vehicle inspection program called Motor Clinic in terms of financing this program and the importance of partnership and collaboration in making it a success. So, Ms. Thuy, the floor is yours, and requesting Chris if you could stop sharing your screen so that Ms. Thuy can share her screen.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure today to present some of the case studies of Hanoi. And I know that the topic today is we will discuss further on the financing. So I will try to make it clear for our case study. And today I would like to introduce you a very latest activities of Hanoi that called Motor Clinic. And it is a very the very latest and the very new initiative of Hanoi regarding to the vehicle emission control in Hanoi City. Next, please. Next, please. So before talking about our case study, I would like to give you some of the pictures of Hanoi today. So you can see a very big density of traffic every day on the roads in Hanoi. So many of you, if you have a chance to go to Hanoi, especially during the rush hours, you can see this picture that are very popular and very common. And with this picture, we can have a very big imagination to the transport as well as the air quality regarding to the transportation success. Next, please. And this is one of our latest calculation in cooperation with the World Bank. And according to our calculation, 40% of the total population is around 3.2 million people who are living and working in Hanoi today who are exposed to the concentrations that exceed 45 milligrams per cubic. Nearly, that means that 5 times higher than the WHO air quality guideline recommendations. So it is one of the warning that make all the policy makers in the city have to think about the air quality and how to improve the situation. Next, please. And another calculation of the World Bank as well. We've just done a study on the source apportionment. And with that, the primary PM2.5 sources in Hanoi, and you can see the graph here, and you can see that the transport account for every city, because as my colleagues just mentioned previously, that it is a transboundary issue. So we are looking for neighboring cities like Bắc Ninh and Hưng Yên, and we found that the transport is account for air pollution, especially the PM2.5 in Hanoi city today. Next. And it is another calculation according to the secondary particulate matter. And the left, the remaining, regardless the total SPM, we found that the transport account for 14% of the total secondary particulate matter. So the transport issue is here, appear in every calculation on the air quality in Hanoi today, and it makes us think about how to solve this problem today. And transport is one of our priorities in our action plan for the air quality during this period. And as mentioned earlier, that the transport is one of our priority, and the city decided to conduct a pilot motor emission control, which called Motor Clinic. It is a very interesting program that we have to cover many issues like technology. We try to measure the emissions. We try to tackle the perception of the citizens, as well as which solutions or policy that we have to touch to solve the transport issues. And to work on this program, as mentioned before, that 3 sectors are main sectors that we have to touch to implement these sectors. And as my colleagues have previously talked about the how the objective or the financing mechanisms, we think how we can cover 3 sectors at the same time to make the program successfully. And besides the financing plan, it is also the engagement, the partnership, the cooperation, which will show and confirm the commitment, how to make the commitment becoming to the action to solve the air quality program. And look at here with the motor clinic. We can see that we tried, the city, Hanoi City, tried to cooperate with the Vietnam Association on the motorbike. And it is one of the enterprises of Hanoi City on motorbike. And another one regarding to the USS and Live and Learn, it is the international and local NGO who support us in every sectors. And you can see on my slides that a lot of sectors and issues have to be supported by in cooperation with these organizations as well as the cities. And the city also, we have a very little budget. So we try to cooperate with others to mobilize the resources like the machines, the facilities, and how to, and as well as the technical, not only the finance, but technical resources as well. Like we get the technical, how to measure the emissions and how to conserve, how to evaluate, and as well as how to conserve to develop the policy for the city regarding to the sustainable transport. And so these measures are put on the table, and we got the commitment and the engagement from different stakeholders to involve into our activities. And what we do with this program in cooperation with others organizations, we try to check the motorbike. So within 5 weeks, we try to test around over 5,000 motors at 8 motor agents provided by the VAMM. The VAMM is the Vietnam Association on the Motorbike in the city. And the objective of the program is we try to review the motorbike emission control, to try to review every the steps of the motorbike emissions, as well as which policies that are providing are implemented to control the transport solutions, and try to get the resources of who are and which responsibilities of the stakeholders into the transport control regarding to the emission in Hanoi City in particular, or in Vietnam in general. And these are a very meaningful and a very meaningful start for the city to look at the transport measures and solutions. And this is a cycle, how we test it, that the people are encouraged to come into our testers at heads of the VAMM, and we try to test the emission by a very special facilities that provided by VAM, and we try to consult the people about the situation of the vehicles. And the owner of the vehicle will understand about their situation, about the emissions, and about how to maintain or how to, and about the air pollution that emitted by the owner. So these are a cycle of the technical and communication awareness raising for the owner and citizens at the same time. And after 5 weeks, more than 1 month, or maybe nearly 2 months, there are some, this is not the finish of the program, but we are still under the consultation to find out the solutions and the program or policies to recommend to the Prime Minister and to the city how to control the emission for the transport. We want to show you some preliminary findings on the program. Next, please. The first finding is we found that with more than 5,000 people coming to test their motorbike, and before the maintenance and after the maintenance, the number is changing. And we found that the maintenance has reduced the motorbike emission. You can look at the number here that after maintaining, because the people who coming, they're going to have their own motorbike tested and maintain again if the emission emitted from the motorbike is exceeding the standard. And after the maintenance, the standard increased by to 89.6%. That means that the maintenance plays a very significant role in emission control from the motorbike. Next, please. Of course, we can find that, especially for the age of the motorbike that using, and with 5 years using motorbike, it will change the emission as well. You can see that the HC, the HC concentration ranging from 1 ppm to 7,364 ppm, with the average concentration about 894.72 ppm. And of course, the CO concentration is also ranging with the average concentration about 3.31% volume. And the maintenance here, we want to mention about the change of the air filter, the oil, and the bogies. And it will have the test of and it will reduce the CO and the HC about around 40.2%. The second findings that we get through the program is that according to the testing by the ECE Euro 3 shows that the CO and the HC concentration and the average consumption reduced by 36.6%. The HC also under 26.7% and 7% relatively. And we can see that the maintenance can improve the emissions and reduce the fuel consumption according to our testing. And we got the Vietnam emission standard to be as our standard to look at the motor control. And we found that for the motorbike control at the initial stage, it is existing standard. But thanks for the program, it is a scientific facts and figures to help and to support the policymaker think about how to adjust the emission standard in the future regarding to the motorbike quality. And the next findings we found that the maintenance as recommended by manufacturers is very important. The technical measures for those motor that do not exceed to meet the standard here, we can have the consultation, and it has to raise the awareness among the citizens on how to maintain, to reduce the toxic from the emission. And of course, we also think about how we can set up emission measure mechanism, because at the moment, for the car in Vietnam, we have the mechanism to measure and to set up the emission and measurement mechanism. But for the motorbike, with more than 5 million motorbike just accessing in Hanoi City, we don't have any emission measure mechanism. So it is one of the limitations to control the emission from big number of the motorbike accessing in Hanoi city. So we think that it is one of the scientific confirmation for the policymaker to think about the technical measures. Next, please. Next, please. Can I have the previous one? Previous. Yes, this is the last primary finding that we found through the program, that if we can control the vehicle emission by testing, or control emission by testing and maintaining, we can find that Hanoi will, there are some scenarios that we found that Hanoi will improve the emissions of motorbike in Hanoi city. First, if we control the vehicle emission, we can reduce around 8.25% of CO, 8.36% of SC. We can save 110 around 109 liter petrol per motorbike a year. And of course, we can save 41,562,063 meter cubic petrol per year, which is relevant to 928 per 8 million Vietnam dong. This is my calculation before the increase of the petrol today. And if we calculate with the price of petrol today, it will maybe more than with this such money. And the last one is we can reduce the toxic emission into the environment for the city. So in this, in a very specific activities of the vehicle testing activities, we can find that it is a very meaningful, with a very meaningful for the policymakers, for the enterprises, or for the citizen as well, in how to engage into the air quality. But above all, to implement this, if we don't have the engagement of every stakeholders, we cannot realize these activities in practice, because we cannot have a lot of fund or facilities in a very short time to work on this program. And it is not an ending of the financing or the engagement or partnership from others, but it opens a further chance to other people. Because after this program, we can make an action plan recommended and policies recommended to the Prime Minister and to the mayors of the city, and how to make how to have further standard adjusted standard policies on the transport emission control. And based on that, we can identify the responsibilities of the engaged stakeholder into these activities, and we can mobilize further finance and resources to implement this action plan in the future. And this is a meaningful of the very specific action that I want to share with you today. And the next slide, please. And it is also a very significant program, because it will make a significant co-benefit for greenhouse gas emission reduction in addition to the air pollution reduction. And it is one of my conclusions from my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thuy, for sharing on the motor clinic from Hanoi City, Vietnam. So now we will hear from Attorney Tristan Dwight Domingo, Assistant City Administrator of the City Government of Davao City, Philippines. So he is the project manager for two of the city's key projects, which are the Waste to Energy Project, a project with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources with a funding grant from the Government of Japan, and the High Priority Bus System Project, a project in partnership with the Philippine National Government through its Department of Transportation and the Asian Development Bank. So Attorney Domingo will speak about the latter, focusing on the funding and financing processes and how different stakeholders and actors are contributing to it. So Attorney Domingo, the floor is yours. And let me just share my screen for Attorney Domingo's slides.
Okay. May I begin?
Yes, go ahead, Attorney Domingo.
Okay. Good day, everyone. On behalf of the people of Davao City, Philippines, I would like to thank the organizers of this workshop for inviting us to share our experiences on air quality financing, or basically for us in our city, the challenges that comes and came with financing and finding partners in implementing meaningful and sustainable projects in our city. Today, I will be presenting and offering a perspective from a city local government unit and how we were able to put ourselves on track and found partners in implementing and financing the city's high priority bus system project, or the HPBS project. I will offer a glimpse to you on how we were able to secure partners in development and, more importantly, financing one of our most important projects currently in Davao City. Next slide, please. The outline of my presentation is as shown. I shall be giving you an overview first about our city as well as our city's current state of public transportation and air quality, two things that we are aiming to address with the HPBS project. Then I will provide you with an insight as to the current financing scheme and the budget for the project, and then give you some ideas based on our experiences on how we were able to obtain financing. So off we begin. Next slide, please. First, allow me to share some relevant details about our city and its current public transport situation. Our city's total land area is around 2,400 square kilometers. It is about 3 times bigger than Singapore, and we are located at the southern island of the country, Philippines. That is where we are in the map as shown in the slide right now. In terms of land development, we are a bit far from the level of development from Singapore. And if you have been to Manila, Philippines, we are probably closer to it in terms of development density. If I may say so myself, comparatively speaking, I think we can say that our city is an up and coming city, and we do have modest requirements in terms of public transport. Currently, our city has around 1.7 to 2 million people, or our population is around that number. We have around 2,366 kilometers of road with more than 7,000 public utility vehicles, or the jeepneys, that we have as our main mode of transportation. Next slide, please. Next slide. The map now currently shown illustrates the previous slide. The map now currently shown illustrates the complicated and overlapping public transport routes we have in our city. One can say that the routing system we have in place needs drastic rationalization, and studies have actually found that the jeepney routes, or the public transportation routes that we currently have not been working efficiently, as most, if not all, of the 7,000 or so public utility vehicles, or the jeepneys that we have, end up or go to the city center. As it is, traffic congestion and travel patterns are a bit of a mess or unpredictable in our city. Next slide, please. For those of you who may not know what kind of public transport we have the ones now shown in the screen. Those vehicles, those colorful vehicles you see, are our main mode of public transportation in the Philippines. And quite significantly in our city, we use those types of vehicles you see on the screen right now. It is also important to know that these public transport vehicles that we have which we are calling jeepneys, are mostly either makeshift or fabricated vehicles using repurposed or used engines. Or as the trend here right now in our city is, most are second-hand vehicles which have been discarded in some other parts of the world, which ended up in our city and are now being used as part of our local public transportation systems. On top of this, we are highly dependent on these jeepneys. As we are highly dependent on this, these second-hand vehicles and its regulation and quality and roadworthiness inspections are sometimes often overlooked. So that is why one can imagine the level of pollution that these vehicles and its inefficient system of operation contribute to our city's air quality or air pollution. Right now, as the figure shown in our screen would tell us, Davao City's current air quality is 1.4 times above the World Health Organization annual air quality guidelines value. It may be relatively speaking still good as compared to other cities, but still the same needs some corrective interventions or measures. Based on a study conducted by our country's Environmental Management Bureau, it is said that mobile sources, particularly vehicles, are responsible for the greatest number of air pollutants in our city. Hence, there really is a need and now a deliberate effort on the part of our city government to improve our public transport, not only to provide safer and a more convenient and efficient way to transport people around the city, but also to use cleaner or more environmental friendly vehicles or the buses that we will be having. Next slide, please. So with the high priority bus system project, the city embarked on this initiative to implement and adopt a modernized public transportation system. This bus system that we will be having is comparable to most bus systems successfully utilized in first world countries like Australia, the US, European countries, and even our fellow neighbor countries here in Asia or ASEAN like Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and many more. So as earlier shown, we have around 7,000 of the jeepneys that we have here now in the city. We plan to replace all of this with 1,000 buses. At least 300 of these 1,000 buses will be 18-meter electric articulated buses, which we estimate replaces at least 8 of the jeepneys that we have right now. So we will be having around 300 of these very long buses. And we'll also have these regular size buses or the 12-meter ones, probably around 200 of this. This will be diesel type. And another 200 of the 9-meter buses, which are also diesel buses. So it's also estimated that the regular size buses, or the 12 and 9-meter buses, will be practically replacing 4 to 5 of the jeepneys that we currently have in the city. So based on the earlier studies that were conducted prior to our adoption or intention to really implement this project, it was said that we are looking at 685 tons daily CO2 reduction, or a total of 219,188 tons annually if we replace the jeepneys with the buses. So with the current consideration of utilizing electric buses on the fleet, it is estimated that the reduction will be further increased at the very least up to 260 tons annually. So this will be a very significant reduction that will result to improvement of air quality in the city. Next slide, please. So since we're interested to know about financing, next please. So just to give you an idea how much the HPBS project costs, in all, we are looking at 74 billion pesos, or that is around 1.4 billion US dollars. Note that the figures that you are seeing on the screen are mostly approximate, and I am unable to provide further specifics as currently procurement is already underway, and some project components, including its budget, are still being finalized prior to its publication or the publication of the bidding documents in the coming days, weeks, and months. So of the 1.4 billion US dollars that we were able to find partners in implementing this project. Together with our national government, we are currently partnering with the Asian Development Bank, or the ADB, for them to fund via loan amounting around 900 million US dollars, or around 60% of the cost of the entire project. The said loan shall be obtained by the Philippine national government through the Department of Transportation, or the DOTR. Also, through ADB and DOTR's initiative, we are looking at a possible funding source via a loan via the Green Climate Fund of around 46 million US dollars. And of course, our own national government will also shoulder around 500 million US dollars for the project. Incidentally, this project, in terms of its scope and effect on public transport, particularly by utilizing modern buses in local transport, will be the first of its kind in our country. Next slide. So I think the more interesting part of why we are here today is to learn how we were able to secure this possible or these funding sources that I just mentioned. So I think we have to realize, or we have to know, that there is really no secret formula or a quick step-by-step guide on how to obtain all of this financing. One thing that I can share, being a part of this project, is it was really a lot of hard work. And one of the most important things that we learned in trying to secure funding or finding funding partners, for this particular project, and also for our projects like the waste to energy project, where we were able to secure around 50 million US dollars via a grant or a donation from the Japanese government, is that we really need a strong and inclusive leadership in our governance system. And we were lucky because we had that in our city for the last 20 or more than years. So just a background, in the past, around 1980s, our city was basically unsafe as it was beset with local armed struggles. But through the strong leaders that we have, we were able to push back and fight off these threats to local safety, security, or peace and order. I'm not sure whether this particular experience that we have will resonate to most of you, but just to illustrate, by having a strong leader, we were able to provide and improve and make our city more available and conducive to invest on. Or at the very least, at the beginning, we prepared our city and made it worthy to be considered for future projects, or safe enough to do some studies on. We had and still do have strong leaders who are providing an inclusive type of leadership and who actively seek out and consider different perspectives to help local government units, or our local government unit, to arrive at its decisions and projects. No matter how hard these decisions are or will be. Strong leadership is indeed very important, as our city leaders or city government saw the project as a necessity for our city's progression. Our strong leaders, with inputs coming from its citizenry and backed by data and the studies conducted here locally, made a strong-willed decision to migrate to a bus system. And we needed a strong leader for us to realize that project, because we will be affecting around 20,000 individuals who belong to the jeepney or the existing public transportation sector that we have. It is also important for our leaders to not only be strong, but also capable to foster inclusivity. With the strong leaders who are also open, we were able to attract a lot of interest from external initiatives or countries or organizations in general. Hence, with the leaders that we have, most city government workers and members of our local private sector were more than willing to welcome and participate in all the studies that were offered to us. We valued the importance of inputs coming from more learned and experienced partners. We were not only interested, and because of the good leaders and governance structure that we have, we also became inspired to be active partners in development. We were more than willing to participate in all the studies and external interests and initiatives that came our city's way. We actively sought out partners and collaborations. And finally, one key thing also which is important is that apart from the strong leaders that we have a highly engaged and involved city officials or government workers. As I see participants here in the workshop, I see a lot of government workers. Know that we have a huge role in all of this. Arguably, we have the biggest role in all of this. You may be often unseen as we are a mere one in a sea of faces in our organization, but you are or we are very important. People like us who participate in workshops like this must always stay engaged and involved. From the inceptions or the study phase of the different projects that we are working on, committed people like you or us who attend learning experiences like this activity that we are having right now is very important. As we enrich ourselves with valuable information from external sources, we learn more and we are able to easily form partnerships and collaborations. We are not only able to expand our knowledge, but our network as well and future and potential partners. Next slide, please. To be more concrete on how we were able to secure the funding, apart from all the key things that I earlier shared, we can trace that the current project that we have, the HPBS project, started as far back as the year 2011. So more than 10 years already. So before ADB considered partnering with us and provide us a loan for this project, they funded a study, the Moving Davao on the Green Road, last 2011. Then that led to another study, which was the Davao Sustainable Urban Transport Project in the year 2013. Then another study in the year 2015. And finally, the last study, the last 2018. And because of the people and leaders and government workers that were working in all of these studies, we not only learned a lot or identified the possible project that will best serve our city, which is the bus project. We were able to identify it as a meaningful project, which is backed by data, information, and the studies that were conducted for the said purpose. By actively participating in these studies, we in the city government were also able to exhibit and manifest the level of commitment that we may be able to provide when the time comes for us to implement this project. We not only saw a great value in these studies, but also in the process of coming up with ideas about implementing the specific project that we wanted. So without our strong leaders who foster and value inclusivity, by staying committed and willingly participating and partnering with external initiatives, and by constantly staying engaged, we were able to secure the financing that we needed to implement the HVBS project. As we in the local government unit exhibited unwavering interest and active participation in identifying, crafting meaningful and sustainable projects, and also maintaining engaged and seek ways to implement it, we in turn made it easier for funding partners to help us. I think that's the time I have. Again, I thank you for having me for our city and allowing us to share our city's experience. I hope you learned something. I am more than willing to answer some questions that you may have. And maybe in the last slide, you can see my email. Next slide, please. You can send me an email and I will try to get back to you and provide the answers that you seek. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Attorney Domingo, for that very comprehensive presentation. And again, if you have any questions for our speakers, kindly send them via chat, and we will and they can address them via chat as well. So the next part of before we go to the next part of our program, we will go into a short break. So we'll have a 5-minute break, and we'll expect everyone back here at around 4:02 p.m. Manila time. So thank you, and see you after 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Maya. I started biking because of the pandemic lockdowns. In my journeys, it made me wonder, how do we know if the air is polluted? I asked my friend Kim, an air pollution expert, and here's what I learned from her. Air quality monitoring is the process of measuring the level of pollutants in the air. Scientists use specialized instruments to learn about the exact concentration of harmful substances in the area and in the air we breathe. These air quality monitors must be properly maintained to ensure that the readings are accurate. The data can tell which areas have clean, know if the air is polluted. I asked my friend Kim, an air pollution expert, and here's what I learned from her. Air quality monitoring is the process of measuring the level of pollutants in the air. Scientists use specialized instruments to learn about the exact concentration of harmful substances in the area and in the air we breathe. These air quality monitors must be properly maintained to ensure that the readings are accurate. The data can tell which Hi, I'm Maya. I started biking because of the pandemic lockdowns. In my journeys, it made me wonder, how do we know if the air is polluted? I asked my friend Kim, an air pollution expert, and here's what I learned from her. Air quality monitoring is the process of measuring the level of pollutants in the air. Scientists use specialized instruments.
Okay, welcome back to everyone. So before we go to our next and our last activity, I would just like to plug an upcoming Cleaner Asia event, which is a webinar on supporting the Asia Pacific on fuel economy baseline and policy development, which will happen tomorrow at 11 o'clock GMT +8. So we will be requesting our colleagues from Cleaner Asia if they can send the registration link via chat. Okay, so for our last activity, okay, will be conducted through breakout groups. So the objective of the breakout group discussion is to further understand the status of air quality financing in your respective cities. If some of you have attended our previous regional event, Technology Roundtable and Fair, it focused on 3 sectors or technology areas, namely air quality monitoring, transport, and renewable energy. So we will be dividing you into these groups with an assigned facilitator to guide the discussion of the status of financing of measures related to the sector you are assigned to, and some questions related to finance planning for that measure. Your respective facilitators will also share some examples of programs, projects, and activities that you can consider for each sector for your discussion. So we are now opening the breakout room, so please accept the invitation to join the room assigned to you. Requesting Sam to please open our breakout groups. Okay, so welcome back everyone to the main session. So we hope you had a good discussion tackling your respective cities' experiences in air quality financing. So before we end, I would just like to let the participants know that we will be sending a post-event email, which will include the presentations that were presented today, and we will also be sharing a link to a post-training evaluation, which includes a post-test, which repeats the questions that you answered in the pre-test during the registration to help us assess the level of engagement and the learnings that our participants have gone through today. And also, if you will be requiring an e-certificate, we request that you answer the post-training evaluation as well. And then in today's session, just to close our event, in today's session, we learned about financial planning as a component of air quality management and climate action from our speakers, Chris Godlove from Think Cities. We also have Kay Patdu from UNEP, who talk about community of practices. And then we also have our city representatives from Hanoi, Ms. Thuy Lethan and Attorney Tristan Dwight Domingo from Davao City. We also learned from them, we learned about the experience and best practices of their cities with regards to their projects on related to air quality management. And we would also like to acknowledge the presence of our partners from MOEJ. I saw earlier that Ko Matsuda-san was with us in our meeting. So thank you for joining us. And on behalf of Clean Air Asia, UNEP, MOEJ, and the U.S. Department of State, I would like to thank everyone for your participation in today's event. And we hope that through today's session, our participants are empowered to address and challenges and take on opportunities for air quality financing for their respective cities. So thank you again, and we hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.